I'm Corinne, and welcome to Goodbye Gluten, where
saying goodbye to gluten does not mean saying goodbye to great food and great taste.
So please like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe to our channel.
today we are going to be making chocolate peppermint chip cookies. Let's see what we'll need. All right. So here's what you're going to need. You'll need 2 sticks or 1 cup of butter or your dairy-free butter substitute. We're using the Country Crock plant butter. We'll need 2 eggs, 3/4 cup each of brown sugar and white sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla, which as you can see, I'm almost out. It is on the grocery list. We'll need 2 1/4 cups of gluten-free flour. We're using our standard Bob's Red Mill 1-to-1 baking mix, a 1/3 cup cocoa powder, unsweetened, it's good old Hershey's, half a teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of salt, and then here are what we're adding in. We've got about a 1/2 cup of peppermint chips. I really did just buy a bag of peppermint chips, and a cup of white chocolate chips. All right, so the first thing we're going to need to do is cream our softened butter. So I just brought it to room temperature. Put that in your mixer and then add in your sugar. So 3/4 cup each of brown sugar and white sugar. You also want to preheat your oven at this time to 375 degrees. So this recipe is based off of the good old-fashioned Nestle Toll House cookie recipe, you know, the one we all grew up with that's on the back of the chocolate chips. So I'm adding 3/4 cup of packed brown sugar. So what I'm doing is pressing it up against, so when it comes out, it actually looks like my little cup, 1/4 cup measure. I find with brown sugar, a smaller measure works better. And then we're going to cream this. Come on. There we go. Lock that down. I'm just going to do this on low until it's all nice and creamy. Stop and kind of scrape things off. Make sure the butter's not clumping. The softer your butter is, the easier this works. But you can see it's starting to come together. We want this a little bit more creamy, a little more light and fluffy. The idea is to blend up and dissolve all those sugar grains. We do want to stop and kind of scrape things off. Make sure the butter's not clumping. The softer your butter is, the easier this works. But you can see it's starting to come together. We want this a little bit more creamy, a little more light and fluffy. The idea is to blend up and dissolve all those sugar grains. Okay, you can tell when this is creamed or not is when it looks fluffy. You can see that the sugar and the butter have been blended together. Again, scrape things down. This will take, it depends on really how soft your butter is. The key is that your butter needs to be room temperature, whatever that might be for your house. Do not use melted butter. Eggs are well incorporated. Again, scraping it down. Do a lot of scraping down. The nice thing is with this recipe, this is a base here. You can use it for anything. You can add in anything you want. It's just a really good basic cookie recipe that is almost always no fail. So I'm adding in the vanilla. going to let that mix for a minute. Okay, and now we'll let that rest for a few minutes while we measure. All right, we need 2 1/4 cups of flour. I always like to give the flour a little bit of a stir gently so you don't end up wearing it. And then I measure it into the cup by scooping it in. This keeps it from packing down, and especially with the gluten-free flour blends, it really can pack in. And then just take a knife, the flat edge, or a spatula or a handle of a spoon. So there's 1 cup. 2 cups, and we need 1/4 of a cup. Okay, done with the flour. We're going to need 1/3 cup of cocoa powder. Now be careful, cocoa powder is messy. So again, be very careful when measuring it or you'll end up wearing it. As you can see, it's all over my counter. We need 1 teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Now I'm going to take my spoon that I was using and just gently mix it. Blend it in. The idea is that you're distributing everything so you don't end up with a bite of salt or a big glob of cocoa powder. All right, moving back to the mixer. Now we're going to add our flour in small amounts. Again, if you dump it all in, you're going to end up wearing it. Ask me, how do I know this?
She watched her husband.
So turn it on gently. And as this is all incorporated, we'll scrape down the sides and add more flour. On the stand mixer, I always like to try to get the beater so it's at the back, so it's just easier for me to get in here. I'll add another portion of the flour. Mix it in. All right, it's all mixed in. We're going to take this out. That to a side so you can see the dough is nice and soft and well mixed. That's what we want to see. So I'm going to scrape it off. I'm all about getting all bits and pieces. Good little hand stir to get everything off the edges. All right, so you can see it's a kind of a softer dough. You can absolutely bake it just like this, or you can add some fun stuff. So today we're adding the white chocolate chips and the peppermint. Add that in, but you could also add things like raisins or oats. You could very easily add in any dried fruit, M&Ms, that would be good. Well, either the teeny tiny little ones that are kind of difficult to eat or the normal size. So it's really whatever your heart desires, you can put in here.
Ooh, like chocolate cranberries.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, you could even put chocolate covered espresso beans in.
Ew, no.
All right, so we've got this nicely mixed in. You could do this with the mixer, but I like doing it by hand because then I'm scraping the bottom and really making sure I'm getting it all mixed in. So this is ready to go. I have my baking sheet lined with parchment. I'm going to grab 2 teaspoons. I've got 2 teaspoons. What I'm going to do is scoop small spoonfuls onto the parchment paper. Parchment paper is a great way to not have to totally scrub your cookie sheet. What I'm going to do first, and this is a trick a family member taught me years ago, is I'm going to make a test cookie. 1 single cookie right in the middle to see how it bakes up. Does this will tell us, do I need to add a little more flour or do I need to add just a drop or 2 of milk to loosen it up? So let's pop this in the oven for 7 minutes. So we've pulled our test cookie out of the oven. It took 9 minutes total. You can see that it's flattened out, which is exactly what we want to see. Comes off, it's all nice and yummy. So we're gonna let that cool. Meanwhile, we are going to do up the rest of these and get them in the oven. So again, I'm doing a spoonful. You can make these as big or as small as you want, but you also want to think about how much is this dough going to spread. Now, if you like a thicker, cakier cookie, you could absolutely add an extra tablespoon or 2 of flour. That will make them a little more cake-like. Or you can leave them as is. It will depend, the quantity of cookies you get depends entirely on the size you make the cookies. This will make at least 3 dozen, probably closer to 4. So we'll put these in the oven for 7 to 9 minutes. And these are not quite ready. You can see they still look very soft and wet looking on the top. So we're going to give them another probably 90 seconds. So I've pulled these out of the oven. I'm going to let them sit here on the pan for a couple of minutes and then move them over to a cooling rack and repeat the process through the rest of the dough.
Go.
So here's a tip. If you want to make cookies, but maybe you don't want to have 3 or 4 dozen cookies sitting around to tempt you, or you want to do like some holiday baking or event baking ahead of time, you can make your cookie dough, put it into your cookie shapes, and then freeze the uncooked dough. That's what I'm doing here. I have my pan lined with some saran wrap, and I'm going to just freeze this dough up. I'll cover it with saran wrap and put it in my freezer. And then once these are frozen, I will pull them out and put them in a Ziploc bag. All right, these have cooled off and you can see they're still soft. They're a little bit gooey in there, but not gushy. Let's see what they taste like. There's just a tiny bit of crunch. They're good. A little bit of mint in the background. The white chocolate comes through. All in all, a delicious and yummy cookie. I can't wait to have these with some coffee or maybe a glass of wine or something good. Anyway,
Ice cream.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoy this. If you make them, let us know how they turn out. And remember what we always say here at Goodbye Gluten. Saying goodbye to great... Remember what we always say here at Goodbye Gluten. Saying goodbye to gluten does not mean saying goodbye to great food and great taste. Thanks a lot.